All right, we get to say good afternoon to Scott Reid once again today. And our feature, of course, as always, brought to you by Guaranteed Industries, reminding you a Can-Air heat pump or furnace can get you through this winter. So give Guaranteed a call, 514-342-3400. Or, by the way, you can always reach them online as well, guaranteedindustries.com. Let me start, Scott, if it's okay, with this story out of Minnesota, out of Minneapolis, where it turns out an ICE agent shoots we don't exactly know who here, an American citizen, somebody. This is done on the street. There's video of this. And, you have another governor, another mayor in this case, coming forward saying, I want these ICE agents out of my city. How damaging is this to the administration?
Well, how do you damage this administration? First of all, you'd have to have the instinct to feel shame or be concerned. I mean, I look at this, and all of us can call the video up. I mean, first of all, they flooded 2,000 of these ICE agents into the city of Minneapolis. And, these guys are literally the secret police. They wander around with bandanas over their face to hide their identities. It's like something out of a science fiction film. And they wander around in what appears to be, with the imprimatur of imposing the law, but they appear to be lawless. And if you look at this video, obviously, what do I know from sitting here, a squillion miles away? But I'll be damned if we're not going to find that this is exactly what it looks like, which is that a woman looked like she was terrified. These guys are rushing at her. She tried to back her car up and leave, and they shot her dead right on the spot.
Yeah.
And, that's because they've harnessed and licensed these cowboys and said, round them up, go. And what does the administration say about it? They say this was a person who tried to weaponize her car, and it was an act of domestic terrorism. They cheapen these labels and the truth of those kinds of crimes when they use them to justify their own means. To me, you look at this and you go, if you were wondering whether or not America was broken, wonder no longer.
I saw a picture. I hadn't seen what you said. Caroline Leavitt, of course, the mouthpiece for the Trump administration. And I think so far, what are they saying? They're saying this is an act of self-defense. When you look at the video, it's clearly not an act of self-defense. It certainly doesn't look that way.
It's not. Unless there's another video, unless this happened twice,
yeah,
it is what it looks like. And what it looks like is they have given badges to lunatics. And imagine the kinds of people that this administration would recruit, right? If you like to kick ass, shoot first, terrorize people, well, then this is the job for you. And that's what they're doing. And they're unleashing them on their own population in their cities. Why on earth would Minneapolis need 2,000 of these guys flooding the streets and now literally shooting somebody in their car? It's just, I know, again, I always say this, people go, well, you got Trump derangement syndrome. I sure as hell do. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you.
All right, let me move on to the other story since we're on Donald Trump here. This is Trump transaction syndrome. You know what? I want to buy something. He is, of course, everyone refers to him as a transactional president. The next thing apparently he wants to buy is Greenland. And I was watching Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, suggesting when a reporter asked the question today, Scott, this is nothing new. Harry Truman had talked about this when he was president. Donald Trump brought this up in his first administration. So what's going on here, and how likely do you think this is to happen?
Well, I don't know how likely it is to happen because Greenland doesn't want it. Denmark, which actually by treaty, by law, by undisputed, verified means owns Greenland, they don't want it. And sure, I think that, there have been past U.S. administrations that said, gee, this could be a strategic asset. And then they stopped. When Denmark wasn't interested, they just stopped. Trump is literally saying this is now a categorical imperative for the United States. We regard this as a matter of national security. We wish to obtain this asset. And they're basically saying, look, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. And by the way, if you like it the hard way, we'd like that too. That'd be kind of fun. And, again, Marco Rubio today was tap dancing like Mikhail Baryshnikov, but let's get real. I guess Baryshnikov didn't technically tap dance. Okay, so Sammy Davis Jr.
Okay, that's fine.
Was literally saying, well, look, and people are saying, well, you were explicitly asked to take the military option off the table, saying, no, of course we wouldn't. We'll make an offer and, see if we can strike a bargain, but we won't obviously roll tanks or send in gunboats. And the Trump administration refused to rule it out. And he said, well, we never take a military option off the table. As though, look, we might run tanks on Disneyland. That's just the way we operate. We never, ever take that option off the table. We'd like to do it through diplomatic means. Well, you can't have an honest diplomatic discussion if it is backed up by the threat of military coercion. And so, how's this going to unfold? I don't know, but this could break the world in half, because Denmark is a NATO country, and according to Article 5, NATO countries are obligated to come to the rescue of a fellow treaty member, except that, of course, another fellow treaty member might be the adjutant. So how does all this work out? It would blow up NATO. And really it just says might is right. So, I've said this before, but in 2026 I have one resolution, and that is I am no longer in the business of starting sentences with Donald Trump would never.
Yeah.
Donald Trump would never try to take Greenland by force. I can't say that. Donald Trump would never then extend that military coercion and use of force against Canada. I can't be in that business. There's no such thing as a sentence that you can ignore that starts with the phrase Donald Trump would never, because we don't know what he would never do.
So, Scott, why is this considered, this asset so important? Is this because of Russia being so close? What's the rationale here?
I think two critical things. One is natural resources. First of all, we get this distorted notion when we look at the maps that we all grew up with. Greenland is monstrous, and it's close. It's close to the Arctic, and it's close to Canada. And so when you look at it, it's full of natural resources. There's potential for rare earth minerals. So first of all, I think, America looks at it and says, this could become critically important, strategically important to us. So we would just rather have it. In the same way that we would like to have the oil reserves of Venezuela, that would be good to have. So we'll just take them. The second reason is that it gives it proximity and all sorts of strategic options in terms of the Arctic. And that should scare the living hell out of us, because most of the Arctic belongs to Canada, except Donald Trump will not agree with the statement I just made. He'd be like, Greenland belongs to Denmark, Baffin Island belongs to Canada, unless I want it. And if I want it, then I'll ask you for it. And if you say no, I'll ask you again. And if you say no again, well, maybe I'll just unleash my military on you. That, it seems to be the world in which we live now. No rules, no respect. Might is right.
If the consideration is that this becomes potentially, a Russian problem, if you will, right? The control of the Arctic, submarines going through there, whatever else. Why can't NATO members together? I'm not asking you to solve the problem, but I'm just, trying to come up with an idea here. If Donald Trump's concerned about the fact it's not, and I think he said the other day, what the Danish have done? They've added an extra dog sled or some stupid thing like that. But they could conceivably get together and just spend some money and just build up their defenses there, could they not?
Sure, they could. I mean, there's two issues with that. One is you need the invitation and participation of the sovereign nation. So in the case of Canada, it would be we'd like to have a NATO force patrolling our waters. Well, would we all feel comfortable about that? Or wouldn't we say, they're ours. They're not under dispute, so we don't need that NATO force. But even if we said, beats the alternative, let's have a NATO force patrolling those waters, Donald Trump isn't going to accept that. That's not going to be it isn't about Russia. It's about accumulation of resources and this Western hemispheric imperialism that, he's articulated explicitly in his foreign policy statement. And so it's no, we want them. So NATO means in his opinion, NATO's it's full of all these BS European countries who have talk funny languages and have a bunch of values I don't share. I don't want them to have a say. I want it to be mine, at my whim, my decision. Accumulation is the absolute driving philosophy behind Donald Trump. And by the way, it's not just accumulation in terms of geopolitical assets. It's also, and I'll take a piece of it. I'll take a VIG for the house. Me and my kids will get rich off it.
All right, let me close by talking about Mark Carney continuing his travels around the world, visiting China next week. Significant in the sense that it's the first time a Canadian Prime Minister has been there, I guess, since 2017. And secondly, though, the question becomes, and this has been an issue right up until now, post Michael Spavor, Michael Kovrig, we want to be careful about how we deal with China. What do you make of this visit to China?
We kind of have no choice. We're sort of driven there. And again, I sound like a lunatic. I sound so obsessed with Trump. But the truth of the matter is, he is dictating these kinds of decisions domestically, internationally, all around the world, and for virtually all nations. So we are being told by Donald Trump, the reliable, dependable, indisputable partner that is the United States is no longer going to be there in terms of having unfettered market access. Okay? Well, then, you're forcing us to go look for other options. Some of those options aren't going to be palatable. We don't really want to increase our relationship with China because China has shown itself to be an unreliable and hostile partner.
Right.
But we have no choice. So then we go looking. And then here's the irony. Trump will say, all right, I know I told you that you can't rely on the United States as a partner, but if you're going to use China as an option, I also wish to deny you that because I'm going to take an ill will. So when it comes to things like canola, if we want to get those tariffs from China lifted off of canola, well, the quid pro quo is to lift tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. That would make Trump insane. That would for sure sink CUSMA. We can't do that. So the Prime Minister is going to spend 4 days next week walking a tightrope, walking across ice with spiky boots as lightly and as gently as he can. Very tricky.
But coming back with something, I would think, no?
They're not going to go for 4 days and come back with like a box of nothing. So for sure there's going to be some kind of framework for strategic engagement, maybe a couple of specific announcements. But I can't imagine that we're going to see a deal on canola because to get a deal on canola, the Chinese have been clear we have to give on electric vehicles.
Right.
And we can't do that for domestic, much less bilateral reasons with the United States.
Crazy times. All right. Scott, I thank you so much. I do appreciate your time again today. Thanks.
I'm Luke Wilson. Join me each week for Film Never Lies. We're going in depth on football and a lot more. We'll pull back the curtain on life in the pros and dive deeper into the stories making the headlines. No hot takes, no lazy narratives, just real honest conversations. You can watch or listen to Film Never Lies on all the TSN platforms and iHeartRadio app.